very good afternoon to you from a very grey and wet Victoria Park in Causeway Bay. We're here for 2 hours to cover 3 main races this afternoon. At 2 o'clock, the main race of the day, it's the 16th Hong Kong International Kart Grand Prix. Now, this race has attracted the world's top drivers, and no wonder, because it's the richest event on the karting calendar. There's 100,000 Hong Kong dollars prize money in total, and to the winner it's worth 30,000. Now, the qualification was decided yesterday after a series of heats, and those that fail to qualify do get a race today. It's a consolation race which is due to start at 2:45, and we'll be covering that. 30 minutes later, it'll be our third and final race, the Seiko Hong Kong and Japan Interport team race. That should take us up to just about 4 o'clock, when we shall be off air. Now, racing started this morning, and the main race was the Hong Kong International Class Championship, which was won by last year's runners-up, Tony Lam. And the man who beat him, Ken Tomsit, last year, failed to make it 3 in a row because he lost all chance when he went off the track to avoid a back marker whose engine had seized on him. Now, before we get to the afternoon's racing, you see the carts are still on the grid. Perhaps a note of historical interest on karts. Now, they started life in the States when a chainsaw and outboard motor company decided to branch out into lawnmowers. Now, the venture wasn't a success, and the company was left with 8,000 engines surplus to requirements. Well, 2 enterprising employees bought one, adapted it to a tubular frame, and karting was born. Now, that was back in 1956. In 1957, the first race had been held in the parking lot of a supermarket in Pasadena. Well, don't mock, the Formula One series now have a race in the parking lot of a Las Vegas nightclub. Well, then racing spread to Europe. It went behind the Iron Curtain. And now the sport's governing body is now within the overall umbrella of the main motor racing body, the FIA. Now, the advantage of these machines, we'll be going in close up to take a better look at them. The advantage of these machines, and therefore the sport, is that they're light, they're easily transportable, and circuits can be set up almost anywhere, including the asphalt soccer pitches that we have here in Victoria Park. Now, to limit the pollution of the environment, all the cars are monitored for noise. Now, before and during each race, anything over 91 decibels, measured from 22 meters in the center of the track, is ruled out. But believe me, there's still a deafening roar as these little engines pass in front of us at the start of the race. Now, our main race commentator this afternoon will be Martin Robson, who competed last year in Hong Kong's international race. But unfortunately for him, fortunately for us, business commitments kept him out. But as I say, Martin, you're now able to help us, but I bet you're a bit envious of the drivers out there this afternoon.
Well, I am in a way, Brian, but on the other hand, I'm not really, considering the weather conditions. These must be some of the most difficult conditions to judge, because it's not quite wet enough for wet tires, and it's not quite dry enough for dry tires. So there's going to be a very big decision for the team managers and the drivers whether to start off on wets and risk the chance of running down the thread completely, and therefore having to come in and change to a new set of wets till it's wet enough, or whether to start off on dries and maybe not do so well in the first couple of laps.
Now, when you say that they can come in and change, now this main race is over 35 laps. The track is just 800 meters all the way around, so really anyone going in for a pit stop is going to be under a great disadvantage. Not like a Formula One race where a pit stop won't necessarily rule you out of contention, but here really they have to make a decision, and the right one right from the start, don't they?
That's right. One lap here is approximately 40 seconds, so if you come in for a pit stop, you very easily drop down 1 lap. And 1 lap in karting is quite difficult to catch up, because you have a lot of back markers to go through usually, and getting through traffic can be very, very difficult. The karts at the moment are, the way they're lined up on the grid was determined yesterday in various qualifying heats, and after some very exciting racing yesterday, we've got number 1, Lars Forsman, on pole position on the grid. Next to him is number 2, Peter de Bruin from the Netherlands, who won last year. And then we have a Japanese driver, Asai, number 3. with Harm Schuurman, another Dutch gentleman, on kart number 4. Harm last year was leading until he unfortunately spun off and played away the race.
Now, Martin, we're seeing them bump start because this is one of the features of this class of go-kart. There are no clutches, so obviously a bump start is the only way to get the race underway, and this will mean that the actual start of the race will be a rolling one. Now, could you explain how they'll be lining up?
Yes, well, the carts will go around the track, and what they do now on this lap is go around as fast as they can to clean out the engine and make sure it's all running smoothly. And when they come back round by the start, you see the starter with the green flag out. This means the carts are now under starter's orders, and they will proceed to go round the circuit until they've lined up in their grid orders. Now, this can take anything from 2 to 3, maybe even 4 laps, although with international class drivers, they usually get themselves lined up pretty quickly.
We saw in practice this morning the less experienced, the local drivers made, as you say, 3 or 4 passes. Now what they do, they all come down in pairs towards the starter, and he decides at the last minute whether or not they're all lined up in the correct order. He's not satisfied, round they go again. But they actually make a charge, as they did there, at the green flag, with the assumption that it'll be raised. And then, of course, they must brake before they get to the end of the first straight, and then carry on as normal to make another pass.
That's right.
Now, one of the interesting people we've got to look out for, way back down on the grid, is the English driver, Terry Fullerton, who's won twice here. Now, he had problems, I gather, in practice yesterday afternoon, but you were saying, watch out for him because he's a terrific starter.
That's right. Terry usually is very good at anticipating when the flag is going to fall, and I think we'll see him shoot probably up the inside of the track and possibly gain maybe 4 or 5 positions.
Another pass. Now, while they're going round, we ought to mention the main straight here that we see them going through past the flag. They can touch speeds of up to 65, 70 miles an hour. They have a very sharp bend, which for easy's sake, we shall call it the first bend. They'll go round over a hump down to a tennis court area, round back up into what we should call the S's, zigzaggy course, into a hairpin over by the pit stand, which is the area where they are now. There's a short straight called the pit straight. Then they turn into the main sprint down along Main Straight. Now here they come again. They're putting their hands up because the only way they have of indicating to the drivers behind that they're going to slow down, because as you're explaining to me this morning, if the back markers haven't noticed that the flag's not waving, they can just see the crowd stream away in front of them. They're going to put their right foot down as hard as they can go, and if they're not careful, they'll all end up in a pile at the end of the first straight.
That's right, and that does sometimes happen with the less experienced drivers, where they don't give proper signals, and you end up with what we saw this morning.
Still not properly lined up. Now, the other thing, Martin, we see some of the drivers reaching behind them with their right hand, adjusting something on the engine. Now, what's that?
Well, they're not actually adjusting something, Brian. They're holding their hand in front of the carburetor, and what this does, it sucks in a little bit of extra fuel, so that when the kart engines are turning slowly and they're not normally sucking in lots of fuel, by putting your hand over and bringing in a little bit more, you give an extra bit of lubrication to the engine. These engines, of course, are 2-stroke engines running on a mixture of oil and petrol.
And we're away!
And it's number 2, Peter de Bruijn has gone straight into the lead, followed by Lars Forsman, number 1 from Sweden. And they've gone right down into the tennis court area. It's still Peter de Bruijn in the lead. No, Lars Forsman has now come through, and he's passed Peter de Bruijn round by the tennis court.
Up into the S's, it's still Lars Forsman, winner 3 years ago at this event. He had a great start. Peter de Bruijn up with him. Number 4 in 3rd place, Harm Schuurman, who's only had 5 races this season. He's won 4 of them. Into the pit straight. They're coming down to the completion of lap 1 in the main straight.
And as they scream by, it's still number 1, Lars Forsman, in the lead, followed by number 2, Peter de Bruin, and Harm Stuurman is now in 3rd position. Number 3 from Japan, Asahi, is pushing hard on Harm's heels, but it's still number 1, Lars Forsman, who's up in the lead. And they come out into the S's. There's a group of 3 cars pushing each other very, very hard. And it's still Lars, followed by Peter de Bruin, followed by Harm Stuurman.
They're all racing on slick tyres, no problems with traction at the moment.
No, I think the track has dried out a little bit, and once these cars start going round, they will very quickly dry out the line. Providing we don't get any more rain, the track surface should be pretty good.
Talking about Terry Fullerton, at the end of that second lap, Terry Fullerton had come up 4 places into 9th position. We'll be seeing a lot of action from this man, I'm sure.
Yes, Terry is a very aggressive driver, and there's another driver to watch out, which is number 22, Stefano Modena.
Modena we saw in action last year. He's 18-year-old last year, long hair flowing out behind him. He literally looked a menacing figure on the track. Absolutely fearless and reckless. He crashed in the main race in the afternoon, and I hope we're going to get a complete race from him this afternoon.
Yes, and I can see that number 13, Terry Fullerton, is still in 9th position and having a bit of a dicer with the Japanese driver. I didn't quite catch the Japanese number. But we still have Lars Forsman in the lead, with Peter de Bruin pushing him, but it seems to me that Lars is pulling away a little bit.
They're opening up a lead, certainly on 3rd place man, Harm Stuurman. 5 right behind them is the Japanese driver, Suzuki. Coming now into the main straight for the completion of lap 4.
And it's number 1, Lars Forsman, in the lead, with number 2, Peter de Bruin, second still.
Fullerton has come up 1 more place into 8th position.
This really promises to be some very exciting racing, because all of these guys are potential or have been past world champions, and none of them are going to give 1 inch of track to the other. They really drive these cars right on the very edge, and one slight mistake and they're off, and at this stage of the race really anything can happen.
It's noticeable to compare the speed that these drivers that are showing here with the racing we saw this morning in practice.
It's number 2, Peter de Bruin, is shot by Lars Forsman. They were being held up by 2 Hong Kong drivers, David Du and Lau Kong Kwong, and it looks like that Peter de Bruin took advantage of that and managed to go by Forsman and is now in the lead.
I was saying, Martin, these drivers their carts seem to be stuck like leeches to the track. This morning we had carts going all over the place, and we were very worried that we were going to get a lot of accidents this afternoon. But this is the skill of these drivers, that they're competing at the highest level, they're pushing themselves, and they're staying on the track.
That's right, these guys are very, very experienced in all kinds of weather, and a little bit of a wet track really doesn't make any difference to them.
A great tussle for 3rd and 4th place between Sherman and Asahi. Suzuki, rather.
Well, Stuurman could have won the race here last year, but unfortunately he was around about the 12th lap. He spun off and played away his chances. At the moment it seems though that de Bruin and Stuurman are both much faster than, de Bruin and Forsman are much faster than Stuurman, because they seem to be pulling away a large gap.
Medina's come up at the end of lap 7 to 11th position, so he's made up 11 positions in this very tight field.
Medina is a very, very aggressive driver. And it's still number 2, Peter de Bruin, in the lead, and Forsman really is giving him a hard time. They've just lapped another back marker. They're both coming down by the dogleg into the pit straight. Peter de Bruin, number 2. Lars Forsman, number 1. They come tearing by us at 60 miles an hour and then hard on the brakes to take the first bend almost sideways.
De Bruin really shut the door on Forsman there. I thought he was going to come up on the inside, but De Bruin took his line, kept him out.
Yes, these drivers are very, very aggressive when they are driving, and they won't give an inch pace on the track. If a guy can close the door, he will.
Modena, at the end of that lap, has moved up another place. He's up into 10th. I think we're going to be seeing something of him later in this race. He's going to be up there with the leaders.
Well, young Modena, of course, is only 19 years old, and he's been out of racing from February this year when he broke his leg in Italy, and he only started racing again in October. So he hasn't really had as much practice as some of the other guys who've been racing all year.
And now on to the 10th of this 35 lap. It's still Peter de Bruijn just shading Lars Forsman.
And we've got number 13, I see, Terry Fullerton, who's moved up into 6th position.
Coming into pit straight now. They've got about 75 meters on the third place man, number 4, Harm Schurman.
Driver number 2, Peter de Bruijn, is last year when he was here, he was driving very nervously, and at one point almost lost the race when he was pressured by Harm Schurman. I'm wondering if the similar thing is going to happen this year, because Lars Forsman really is pushing him very, very hard.
In that 10th lap, Terry Fullerton has moved up one more place. Let's see if he's made any ground as they cross in front of us, in front of our commentary position at the end of the 11th lap. There's the leader, Peter de Bruijn, Lars Forsman.
And Lars Forsman is making a play. He was right upside de Bruijn as they go into the hump.
Fullerton is closing, there's no doubt about that. As he goes over the hump down into the tennis court area, he's certainly closing on the leading pack. As we said, mechanical problems kept him out last year. Mechanical problems kept him down the grid yesterday's practice, but he's certainly making up for it this afternoon.
Terry is, of course, a very, very experienced driver, having been British champion quite a number of times, and he's a full-time driver. He does nothing but drive karts all the time, so he has certainly got a very good chance of doing very well in the IKP this year. He has won it twice previously. And the leader, Peter de Bruijn, is still fighting off Lars Forsman as they come up to some back markers.
Now this really should sort them out, because if a back marker's a little bit inexperienced at the back, he could well pull one or the other of the drivers.
Yes, it's very easy to come up behind a back marker, and especially with an inexperienced driver, to judge that you may think he's going to move to the left, but at the very last moment they can do something unpredictable, move to the right and knock you off completely.
Down they come for the completion of lap 13. Nothing to choose between these two front runners. Terry Fullerton right up behind number 4, Harm Schurman. Forsman
really is driving inches away from the bumper of Peter de Bruijn. One minute Peter seems to be pulling away a little bit, but as soon as they come onto the straight, Lars seems to have a little bit more power in his engine and pulls right up behind him.
They come for the completion of lap 14. What a scrap these two are having at the front. And what a scrap we've got here for the 3rd, 4th and 5th places between Schurman, Suzuki and Terry Fullerton.
And it's still Peter de Bruijn in the lead from Lars Forsman. This is a very, very exciting race. I've never seen anyone be impressed by Forsman.
Let's have a look at 3rd, 4th, 5th battle. Numbers 4, 5 and 13.
As they come down the straight, it's still Peter de Bruijn leading from Lars Forsman of Sweden. Kart number 2 in the lead. Kart number 4.
Fast in front of our commentary position. Terry Fullerton still right up with the Harm Schurman, 3rd place, Suzuki in 5th. And we just noticed that Modena, the young Italian, has moved up to 6th position. That's at the completion of lap 15.
number 5, Suzuki, seems to be hanging on to his 4th place. He's been there almost since the beginning of the race. And I think that Fullerton is going to have a job cut out trying to get by him. There they go, Skuurman and Fullerton. And they've just lapped some Hong Kong back markers, and they're now coming down into the pit straight. As they come round the hairpin and onto the main straight. Foot to the floor.
65 miles an hour.
Peter de Bruin.
Only inches. Oh, nearly lost it there, last horseman.
Way up on 2 wheels. That indicates, Brian, the track is getting very slippery.
And through into 3rd place at that bend. At the end of main straight was Terry Fullerton. Now I'm sure he's going to be up with the leaders, with the 2 front men before long.
Terry really is driving a superb race. To come from 13th place with this quality of driver on the track and move all the way up really is something.
Well, let's hope that his engine and kart will keep him in the race this year.
Been dogged by some problems the last couple of years in Hong Kong, but he has won this race twice previously, and in 1973 and in 1980, so I think he has a good chance of doing it a 3rd time. He's certainly still way up there with the front runners.
Well, we see the leaders, Peter de Bruin, last horseman, coming into the S's. Part of the course was very, very slippery this morning. A lot of drivers having trouble as they went into the S's.
And they come down the straight past our commentary position, and it looks like last horseman's kart is beginning to lift up. It either indicates that his tires are becoming very sticky and the track is drying out, or he is pushing it so hard that he's right on the very edge of tipping over. When these drivers drive so close, it really takes very quick reactions in order not to make a slight error and bump the kart in front. If you bump the kart in front, you can sometimes knock the kart off, but chances are you also are knocked yourself off.
What speed are they going through the S's there?
Through the S's,
40 miles an hour?
Yeah, I guess around about that, 35 to 40. Yesterday we worked out that the average lap speed is somewhere around 72 kilometers per hour on this tiny circuit. And last horseman is trying left, right and center to try and get by number 2, Peter de Bruin. They're coming up to a back marker right now, and this is where things really get hairy.
There's Terry Fullerton, number 13. He's gaining on the front too. This has been an extraordinary race by him. He's come up from 30th position on the grid. There's a kart in trouble.
And the leader has changed. Last horseman is back into the lead. It appeared to me that Peter de Bruin was blocked slightly by a back marker, and now that gave last horseman that tiny little chance he needed to get through into the lead. Number 16 is Shirakuma, one of the Japanese drivers, and he appeared to block Peter de Bruin slightly and therefore give last horseman the chance he needed to get into the lead.
There he is coming in now. We're getting a little bit of more rain on the track. This should be very interesting in the closing stages. They're coming in now into the main straight for the completion of lap 22.
And Lars had a very close call there with another black back marker. He almost spun into him.
Over the hump, down into the S's. Terry Fullerton behind them, fairly screaming after them.
And they just touched. That was kart number 18, which is Greg Pointed, touched with the leader, Lars Forsman. Lars really is driving very aggressively. Peter de Bruin is still right there on his tail as they come round.
Number 20 there in trouble, Japanese driver Kitagawa.
To the main straight again, and Lars is pulling away slightly from second place man number 2, Peter de Bruin.
Completion of lap 23, 35 lap race, 12 to go.
13, Terry Fullerton, has now moved up into 3rd position. And it looks like he's gaining slightly on number 2, Peter de Bruin. Here we come round the S's.
The roles reversed here. Last Sportsman was right on the back wheels of De Bruin throughout the race up until now, but it looks as though Forsman is just getting a little bit of a breathing space.
Yes, he's beginning to pull away a little, but now they come up behind these back markers, and it looks like number 11, Yutaka, is slowing Forsman down a little bit, and therefore enabling number 2, De Bruin, to catch up slightly.
De Bruin going very wide there to go round the back markers. Forsman through rather more easily. Coming into the S's, there's a clear road in front of Forsman now.
The track now, Brian, will start to get quite slippery because the rain has started to come down slowly again, and all these drivers are still on slicks. It's still number 1, Lars Forsman in the lead, followed by number 2, Peter de Bruin.
Fullerton through, still in 3rd place. End of the 25th lap, 10 laps to go.
Still in the lead. Lars, of course, is full-time involved in the kart sport because he's a kart dealer in his hometown in Sweden. And he finished 2nd this year in the World Championships.
1.2 second difference between the leader, Forsman, and 2nd place man, Peter de Bruin, as they pass in front of our commentary box for the start of the 27th lap.
Go by the tree coming out of the tennis court area and into the S's. It's still number 1, Lars Forsman, and Lars Forsman now really is pulling away from number 2, Peter de Bruin.
Forsman there benefiting from the lack of traffic up in front. He can really put his head down and get going. Peter de Bruin had to contend with a lot of back markers, negotiating round his way around them in the middle stage of this race.
But it appears that Lars also is benefiting from the slippery conditions because he's always been very fast in the wet. Seems to be away completely from Peter de Bruin.
One surprise is that the Japanese riders aren't showing a bit better. As you were saying earlier, that they're normally very good in the rain, very well prepared.
Yes, although in these conditions it's not quite rain and it's not quite dry, so providing they're on rain tires, they are very fast. Although when they're driving on slicks in the semi-wet conditions, they have no more advantage than any of the other drivers on the track.
Of the 28th lap, it's still Forsman in the lead, De Bruin 2nd, Terry Fullerton who's come right up from 13th position on the grid into 3rd place.
And that's the leader, Lars Forsman, lapping number 8, Noda from Japan, which is very surprising because Noda did very well in time trials here, and he now appears to be dropping way down. He's been lapped by the leader.
Forsman is lifting the outside tyre quite frequently as he goes around these bends.
He really is pushing his car to the limit, although he won't be lifting so much anymore because as the track gets slippery, number 1, Lars Forsman, still in the lead from number 2, Peter de Bruin.
On the 31st lap, and Modena, the young Italian, has moved up into 4th place ahead of Suzuki. What if we were extolling the virtues of Terry Fullerton coming up to 3rd from 13th? What about Modena, right up from 22nd position on the grid?
Well, Modena is an Italian driver, and as Italian, he's a very impressive driver.
lap. Well, can Forsman hold on? He's got a little bit of clear road in front of him. He needs to stay out of trouble, and barring any mechanical problem, he must have this race.
Yes, of course, you could never tell until the very last lap, until the checkered flag has been passed, because in karting, anything can happen. These small 100cc engines turn over at 22,000 RPM per minute, and it only takes a small speck of dust and the whole thing seizes up. And this is what happened last year to various of the top drivers. They were going along very nicely until suddenly the engine seized. But Lars Forsman looks in great shape, and looking at his card, everything appears to be fine. I think he will have a very good chance of winning the 16th IKP.
He certainly opened up a little bit of a lead on second place man Peter De Bruyne now. De Bruyne got snarled up with a couple of back markers. Number 27 there in difficulty, Andy Chan, Hong Kong driver. Lars Forsman up on the tail of number 23, the Hong Kong driver Ken Thompson, who I mentioned in the introduction to this race, was twice winner of the Hong Kong International Class event. He spun out this morning. There's like 2 laps to go. Lars Forsman, can he hold on?
Lars Forsman now coming out of the tennis court area into the S's. The track now really becoming very slippery with this very fine rain coming down. Lars going by a Hong Kong driver, number 31, David Du. And he really has pulled himself out quite a nice lead.
Last lap, kart number 1. Terry Fullerton has come up into second place. What's happened to Peter De Bruyne? De Bruyne way back down the field.
And the checkered flag is ready for number 1, Lars Forsman, as he comes down the S's into pit straight, round the hairpin, coming up by the pits, onto the main straight. Lars Forsman, kart number 1, has won the 16th International Hong Kong Kart Grand Prix.
A superb drive. A superb drive from him now. Where's Terry Fullerton? There he is. Waves to the crowd. He'll be delighted with that ride. Coming up, as I said, from 13th up to 2nd. A terrific ride from him. De Bruyne through, I think that must be... No, we have kart number 5, Suzuki.
Suzuki in third place. According to my lap chart here, Brian, I have number 22, Stefano Medino, finishing in 6th place, but of course we'll have to wait for the official confirmation.
Of course, we found this morning very, very confusing to keep up with the back of the field, because this morning we were going through checking on one of the races, and we thought that a back marker, number 20, was balking the leader, and he kept getting a blue flag from the track marshals, who were also confused. The track announcer was also confused, and in the end he was given the last lap sign, and in fact he'd sneaked through down at the tennis court. They're really the only people that can tell are the Seiko timers, the official timers. There's an official on each kart.
That's right. The main problem with karting is, of course, that the lap times are so low, and positions change so often that unless you have a large team of lap scorers, it's very, very difficult to keep track of who's where.
Now, we've got the 2 places we're sure of. Lars Forsman first, Terry Fullerton, yes, it's Peter De Bruyne up into 3rd. We've got 2 lap scorers helping us, so there was 1 right, 1 wrong. Okay, when you're ready. In fourth place there, kart number 5, Suzuki. Fifth place.
Kart number 6, Wiley from Japan.
Okay, we'll take a short break. We'll be back in time for the presentation ceremony and, of course, the rest of the afternoon's racing. We'll take a short break.
Now for the drawing.
In a season of stars, it's TV censored bloopers. The flops. The flubs.
You'd be in Fantalina, right?
The flops.
Because you're the only gaffoons dumb enough to try to muscle in on John Mazzetti.
TV censored bloopers in a season of stars. December the 6th on TVB Power.
That's why I'm a pearl. I'm a pearl watcher.
If you're going to Hawaii, the best way to see the islands is by sea. This eliminates annoying problems such as immigration check-ins and hotel reservations. Enjoy the ship's facilities and have plenty of time for sightseeing. For more details of the Hawaii Cruise Highlight Tour, contact your travel agent.
Welcome back to a very wet and grey Victoria Park in Causeway Bay. You will have just seen a very exciting main race, the 16th Hong Kong Kart Grand Prix, which was won by the fastest man in practice, Lars Forsman. Second place, the race of the day, I thought, was from Terry Fullerton, who'd come right up from 13th position. Now, of course, it's an indication, if you're wondering, the grid positions, unlike Formula One racing, let's say, where the karts have, or the cars have a number assigned to them and they keep the same numbers throughout the season. In karting, the number changes with each event, with each meeting. Now, the kart number 1 will always be the fastest in practice, kart number 2 the second fastest in practice, and so on.
That's correct, yeah. Usually what happens is the grid positions are determined with a series of heats, and you get a new number on your card every time you start a new race, so it becomes very, very difficult at times to keep track of who's who.
On screen we have, while we're waiting for the winners to come round to the victory rostrum, we've got, we can see the scales in the background. We'll talk about the scales later. There's Lars Forsman.
There's Terry Fullerton.
On the left. And shaking hands there, Peter De Bruyne, last year's winner. With a motley assortment of karts. Now, we mentioned the scales. Now, there's scrutineering before the races, i.e. the karts have to conform to the standard requirements laid down. There's a weight limit on the karts, and they're also presumably checked after each race.
Yes, the kart plus... and if the driver is too light, which a lot of drivers are, they carry pieces of lead on the kart in order to come up to that minimum. After each race, mainly the winning karts, the engines are opened up and checked in order to see that nobody is cheated by slightly increasing the bore size or anything.
Lars Forsman waiting for the champagne.
Considering the conditions here at the moment, this track must be very, very slippery. It really was a very good race by Lars Forsman. He lost the lead once to Peter De Bruyne and took it back and held on to it. I think he gave most members of the press there a nice champagne bath.
Lars Forsman, winner of the 13th International Kart Grand Prix back in '79. Well, obviously a very happy man, and 30,000 Hong Kong dollars the richer. reminder that this kart Grand Prix is the richest event on the karting calendar, over 100,000 Hong Kong dollars in prize money. Second place man Peter De Bruyne with the champagne spouting there. He gets $2,000 plus a trophy. And third place man Terry Fullerton, Great Britain, 1,000. Sorry, second place. I've taken a place away from Terry Fullerton.
You can see from the way all the people on the stands are huddled up underneath umbrellas, it really is beginning to come down now. I think we may see some